Hey all, welcome back to the Docker Analogy series where we are learning and mastering Docker each day. In the last video, we talked about how Docker Compose can help us manage the multi-container app. We also we basically transformed our existing to-do app into multi-container app. And then using the Docker Compose, we were able to manage that app. And this was the Docker Compose file that we had used. And while we were running the application, what we had found, when we ran the application, we ran using Docker Compose up. Okay, and right now, because we are running Docker Compose up, this specific containers or this specific Docker containers are running in the as a sub process of my current terminal window. What I mean by that is, if I perform a control C, or if I close this terminal window, my containers will go down. For example, if I do control C, you can see the Docker containers are getting stopped, and if I go back to my app, I wouldn't be able to access my app. The reason was that when I ran Docker Compose up, it was running as a child process of my existing process which is running, or the terminal which is running. The way around this problem is you can run the containers using Docker Compose up in a detached mode using -d. Now if I do this, right, you can see my containers are started. I'm back to my terminal. Okay, and then I can do let's say docker ps a, and I can see my containers are coming up. It has been up for last 9 seconds now, and then I can access my portal as well, right, which is working really well. So this is one of the things that I wanted to cover that we didn't cover in the last video. The another point I wanted to talk was, now if we go back to our Docker Compose file, if you remember, one of the problem that we had faced, that when we ran this for the very first time, our app has started, okay, and it was looking for the DB. But unfortunately, this container was not created for the first time. Okay, that's why we ran into issue where even though our containers were running separately, we couldn't access the app. The reason was this app container was not able to connect to DB. Okay, the reason is, by the time it was so let's imagine this flow, right? When you are starting this process, the app container comes up and it's trying to connect to DB container, right, MySQL container. And for example, let's imagine this MySQL image is not present in my local in my local images directory or repository, right? You can see MySQL here, but let's imagine it's not there. Okay, so MySQL container to come up, it needs to download this image from Docker Hub, which might take time. Okay, and then by the time this container would start up and it will try to connect to DB, and if it doesn't connect, then it will break. Okay, unless, I mean, you can obviously write a back of financial algorithm where you can try to connect the DB the first time. If it doesn't connect, you will try to connect in maybe another in 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 40 seconds. You can try that out. Okay, so that is another way where you can actually try to reconnect every few seconds and eventually give up, saying that container did not come up. Okay, so that is one way you can do it. The another way through which you can achieve this is using a depends on as an attribute. So Docker Compose has this attribute called depends on. Okay, so if I write depends on, and I can write what is the service name on which my container is dependent. Okay, so my container is dependent on MySQL. So what is going to happen now, if I let me bring this down. No, I think let me bring this down. So the way you bring down the containers is Docker Compose down. That's the simple command, right? As soon as you do down, everything will go up, right? Everything will be teared down. So you can see docker ps, it did not show any containers, no running containers. Even the containers are not shown in a exited state also, it is all gone, right? So Docker Compose down is the command to do that. Yeah, coming back to this, So what we are saying is, now if I run Docker Compose up, now if I run docker compose up minus d, what is going to happen is it is going to, docker compose is going to evaluate this, going to create a graph, and it is going to see what containers, what container dependency we have. So we can see the app containers depends on MySQL. So what it is going to do is it will not try to create this app container. It will try to first create the containers on which this app is dependent on. So it will first bring up the MySQL container, okay, and then it will try to bring up the app container. Okay, let's give it a, let's do a quick test on this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this depends on. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, so docker images, I'm going to remove this MySQL. Okay, so docker image rm MySQL 8.0. okay, so docker images, so MySQL is gone. Now what we want to do is we want to run this in the current state, and what is going to happen is the docker, it will try to bring up this container because there is no dependency at this moment, and it will not, and by the time it is trying to bring it up, it will also try to, I mean the MySQL will try to download this from Docker Hub, okay, and in the meantime it will try to connect it to this MySQL container, and it will fail, and eventually our portal will fail to display here. Okay, this is the test we are going to do, and then we are going to see how depends on solve this. So docker compose up, I'm going to run this right like this. Okay, so that, okay, it's going to pull up first, that's fine. Maybe docker compose is becoming intelligent. Instead of bringing up the other container, it's trying to download the container which is not present. So I'm going to, okay, so this is interesting actually. So what it did is actually it waited for that container to come up. It actually waited for that container to come up, but it may not be the case. It may not always be the case. Let's try one more time. Okay, so docker ps minus a, so docker ps docker rm docker ps minus a minus q, let's kill all the containers. Okay, rm I image rm, let me delete this one more time. Okay, let's try this one more time. So docker compose up minus d, let's see what's the container state here. Docker ps, okay, yeah, somehow despite there is no dependency, somehow it is working, you know, but this may not be the case always, right? You cannot depend on this, you know, that's the reason we have a depends on as a dependency. Okay, so even though it is working, you shouldn't be actually relying on this. Okay, instead you should be using the depends on as the depends on as the flag to indicate that before you start the app as a container, your containers app treated depends on MySQL, so they have to bring up app first. Okay, and then they can start the app, I mean they can start the MySQL container first, and then the app container can be started. Let me go back, let me see. Okay, fortunately it is working fine, can't really blame it. Okay, now that we have docker compose up, let's now that we have a depends on, let's try with this as well. In fact, it should work just fine. Image rm, let me remove the image. Oh, I removed the node image, which is not good thing. Image rm, okay, docker images, let me delete MySQL, docker image rm MySQL 8.0. okay, let's try now that I don't have even node image, right? Node image is needed here. Okay, I don't have any of that image, Let's try it now. Let's see what it does. Docker compose up minus d. So it's pulling both the images right now. Let's see which ones goes first. And if this goes first, it might try to start that container also. But now that we have depends on, it will wait for MySQL to finish first, and then it will download this container. I mean, bring up this container because of the dependency. Oh, this is already pulled. Interesting. Docker ps. Okay, it's not come up. Okay, it is completed, and it is, I think, waiting for this container to come up. Let's check this. Docker ps minus minus watch. Does this work? Okay, watch is not. I think it's in Kubernetes. I think it will. It is pulled, but it is, I think it is waiting for this to finish first. Wonderful. So once this is done, okay, network was created. It brought up the MySQL container and then the app container. Now if I do Docker ps, this is how it should work. Let me do, yeah, our containers and data is, everything is back. If you remember that this data is back, reason is we have this Docker volume which is available. Docker volumes, Docker volume ls, sorry, my bad, Docker volume ls. Okay, because we have mapped this volume which is stored locally. Okay, and even though the MySQL container is new, it is getting mapped to this volume which is already present. That's why this data is coming back. Okay, that's about the depends on, very important flag. Fortunately it worked for 2 containers, but when you have a 50 container app, right, and you have a dependency, then we will not be as fortunate as we were today in this application. Okay, let's now look at another point. Okay, so last time we discussed regarding how many ports we were able to provide this port mapping using an array environment, using the array as a convention, but we didn't do that for environment. And there is a different format for environment, and I am more comfortable with that. So the format is like very, it's not very complex. So in order to provide this environment as a array format, what you need to do is provide this as a dash name of the key and then its value. So this is alternate format that we can use. And I'm more comfortable with this format than the other format. So let's have 2 formats here, right? In one environment, we are providing values like an array parameter instead of using this modern format. Okay, let's have both the conventions here. Okay, I'm going to bring down my containers, Docker compose down. Now I'm saying Docker compose up minus d. Okay, yeah, things are back. Looks like something went wrong. Let me see. Docker ps. Things seems to be fine. Docker logs minus f. This is all good. Oh yeah, I think maybe there was some glitch here. Okay, yeah, so we are back to life. Okay, this is just a different format that you can use. I'm more comfortable with this format than a format like this, but it's up to us. Okay, I think that's it. Those are the things I wanted to cover. Thank you everyone. Bye.